Welcome to another episode of Feed the Trolls. Thorin is back and Note is joining us as well. You'll know him from HLTV, and he's got a bunch of podcasts as well, which I'll drop down in the description. Today we're doing the one that you actually asked about. I saw in the comments of the latest video straight away someone was like, "When are you going to talk about Falcons?" Because obviously the m0NESY announcement happened. Well, we're here. We're talking about Falcons. It's the conversation that needs to happen. Obviously, they come into PGL Bucharest, and all the rumors are that m0NESY is going to Falcons. Then there's rumors about Kyousuke coming to Falcons after the major, and then Falcons plays really shit the first two games. And of course, as everyone loves to do on the internet, they come and meme on this team. TLDR, they win the whole competition by playing m0NESY in the grand finals, and that's where we're at. So first off, let's talk about the Counter-Strike. I mean, Thorin, I saw you had a lot to say about this online during PGL Bucharest, sort of giving a lot of people a bit of shit for
Sure.
complaining about the Falcons' performance at the start of the group stages, especially after they won. I think you enjoyed that a little bit too much, it seemed.
Definitely. Listen, there's nothing I enjoy more than me being right and then other people being categorically wrong. Those are my two favorite things. So if I can combine them, even better. No, the problem I have is this. It's like I said on Hot Take Point Made. I can understand why people might dislike the Falcons, by the way. Like they might dislike the idea it's not an organic team. It's been hand-picked. You're spending over the odds for everyone. Everyone knows until now when Nico joined, everyone else just joined for the massive salary and because it's like crazy life-changing money. And then on the side, you hope zonic fucks around and make a good team and you actually have success in the game. So I can get why people hate on all that. People, if you want to hate on the political angle of the Saudis or what it's doing to esports, but the one thing I don't get is what does that have to do with the 5 players in the server? Like when I'll pick a player that wasn't there. When Degster shoots someone with an AWP, does he really have to get twice as many kills because the AWP they had in 2023 wasn't that good? Like, what even is that? You know what I mean? So the problem I have is too many people have taken the fact that they actually want to combine their favorite things, hating on Falcons for non-in-game reasons, but then they've taken the fact that everyone's addicted last year, being drunk off making fun of them in the game, and they're doing both at the same time, and that part never made any sense to me, because here's the thing. I definitely did not think this team would go all the way to the final and win it. I think I had them like third most likely to win in the playoffs. I actually thought the winners would be like either a Raw or FaZe, actually. So I didn't have them as my number one team. But I've never understood this take that like this roster, this specific one that's just ended now, was like a bad team or not even top 10 or that. Like, if you ever looked at their results, even when they would lose, they had a lot of close series. They had a lot of times they actually played like top teams pretty close. If people don't know, they're actually one of the only teams on land that has beaten that mouse sports team that won the last PGL. So, like, I agree. It's a bit like FaZe. The results weren't at the level people want them to be for the status of the names. I get that part. But I think people like took the fact they wanted to hate on them and sort of pushed the boat out, I think, on the analysis too much. So that's why I always want to ask in all discussions about Falcons, are we talking about this lineup? Are we talking about the overall project? Are we, again, which perspective are we judging it from? If we're judging from Nico's perspective, he has a very different set of expectations from maybe zonic. Maybe zonic, by the way, that is in line with the Kassad critique of like, you've had millions of dollars. Where's your team? Like, you should have been at majors. But that's a separate discussion to me. So I think during that event, I don't blame people on the initial one because, first of all, no one knew Complexity was any good. So that actually wasn't taken as like tick for Complexity. It was like, fucking hell, Falcons is losing to them as well. Remember, at the PGL before, they lost every bloody game except to the female team. That's the only team they beat. So I think I did enjoy that people were like over-hating on them in that sense, because to me, it was always going to backlash. Like, one of the weirdest things to me is this. I could get why you could hate on last year's. This year's has Nico in it. Like, Nico on his own wins you a game or two every tournament, as he did here. Like, and then if they ever get a good performance from Degster and the likes of that, they're cooking. They're actually a good team. They're not an elite team, but they are a good team, in my opinion. I mean, we'll never see this roster again, but it's all good.
Yeah, the rest is done now. No, I mean, I'll change this question a bit for you though. Why do you think people like to meme on Falcons so much? Because let's be honest, even the roster last year, they hadn't even really played much. They'd had an okay run at Katowice, and people were already hating on them. Is it just because we don't want to see good players make money?
I think it's just like Thorin said, it's a lot of carryover from last year, honestly, because the number of people who were hating them, especially after the whole Boris incident, where that just changed the narrative super early into being like, oh, like everybody hates Falcons. There's already the people who didn't like the team because of the Saudi backing. And then once you had that Boris incident happen, you had all these conflicting stories. People just loved piling on and piling on and piling on. And obviously their results didn't get better throughout last year. So then it just became a fun, trendy thing to hate Falcons. And then,
Yeah.
you know, like how the community gets is once they have like something that they're enjoying hating on, it's very hard to get them to stop. until you start winning everything, basically. And then they're like, oh, suddenly I really like this team because they're winning. But it really is just that carryover, because when you come into this year and it's a completely different team, you have the heroic core of last year that was actually doing
Well, we
pretty
all
well.
fans of that team. Weren't they? All,
Exactly.
wasn't that everyone's second favourite team? Like when your team gets knocked out, I loved that team. It was baller, wasn't it?
Yeah, and they're making the major playoffs. People are cheering them on. It's just like, it's the strange narrative shift when you come into this year. It's not like these players join the org just to make money. Obviously, it's a great deal for them, but they're not joining it to not actually try and play the game. They have a young in-game leader. They actually have talent. They're clearly putting in the effort, but because it's so much carryover baggage, people just want to keep piling on. And it's the same thing with like the Zonic thing, is that obviously last year there was fair criticism because he kept coming out and doing these interviews where he's like, I didn't have the team I wanted the whole time. It's like, okay, but like do what you can with this one, I guess. Don't at least, pile on while it's all happening. But then this year, they're kind of taking that narrative and continuing, despite all of the players saying Zonic's doing so much work. He's clearly putting an effort to build this roster the way he tried to last year, but just couldn't get done. Now he has NiKo. Now he has m0NESY. If people are just going to keep like piling on just based on that and not actually look at what he's done this year so far, their results this year haven't been bad at all. Like most of the time, they're losing to like m0NESY. They lost to Eternal Fire early, but a lot of these runs, they've actually made pretty decent finishes, despite still basically trying to integrate NiKo since the start of the year, starting this roster a little from not from scratch, but like trying to build up their whole playbook with NiKo and change up their whole CT playbook.
I did appreciate, by the way, I think Maui had the greatest corp I've ever heard from someone, just like the last grasps on the edge of the fingers on the edge of the cliff of holding on to the hating on Falcons, was he actually said the line to me. True, it was in the spur of the moment. He probably didn't think it through. He basically was like, look, if you just ignore those PGLs, their results are all terrible. It's like, what? By that logic, if you just ignore all your money, you broke, you bitch. What are you talking about? Like, I think that's like, in a way, I know what he meant, but that's such a bad way to see it. Okay.
Okay, Maui. Yeah, no, that is the weirdest take in a while.
What he means, but it's like, come on, mate. Those are like 2 of the 5 tournaments they played or something. So of course I have to count.
Like if you
just ignore the PGLs, m0NESY hasn't won in an arena yet either.
There you go. Bombs. Yeah, a bunch of bombs in it.
I love it. I was kind of annoyed with Zonic last year. I'm not going to lie. I thought that like a lot of those interviews, I just got really freaking annoyed. Like I'll never forget the beginning of last year, he did an interview on HLTV where like half the interview was him talking about business class and how Falcons was flying everyone business class,
right,
and how important it was to fly everyone business class. And then I was at Blast and I made a joke because they weren't playing very well. And I was like, well, if you're getting flown business class, you don't really have an excuse. And then next thing, Falcons is like messaging the TO being like, please don't bring up the business class.
Come on.
And so after that, I blamed Zonic. I was like, this is all your fault. You spoke about it. Like, you're in trouble. But not only on top of that, like, it was also, for me, it was the thing about this isn't really the bit of the scapegoating at the end of the year where he was like, well, it wasn't really the lineup I wanted and it wasn't this. I was like, dude, like, I guarantee you I'm sorry to all the Gamer Legion players, but I'm sure that's not the lineup Ash would want. I'm sure Ash would want m0NESY and NiKo as well. Like, you kind of, you work with the pieces you're dealt and you do the best you can and you don't throw them under the bus. I noticed there's no video about NiKo changing his mask for PGL Bucharest, though. Apparently that's okay if you win the trophy, right?
But let's change his Oppa.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I made a whole swap straight after.
There you go, exactly.
Let's talk about that though, because I do think so. Obviously, they come into PGL Bucharest and they have that. I thought it was pretty shocking performances against Gamer Legion and Complexity. And I won't lie, I presumed that the team was going through turmoil because I was like, it must be pretty shit if you're degster and you come in and you hear that you're probably out after this. Though I say that he must have known at the beginning of the year because it's not like they haven't made it pretty clear they're going after m0NESY. But then, just before you're about
NiKo
to play...
had that interview where he was like, I came into the team and I said I wanted to play with m0NESY again.
Yeah.
Even though I know he didn't mean it, he did make it sound like he arrived like, hey, keep that seat cleaner for m0NESY, will you, Dexter? Like, he made it sound like he's walked in the room and said that's something mad, didn't it? I know.
It was like everyone kind of knew. And then, but obviously then the Tessus thing drops as well, like just as they're about to start playing. And I'm like, okay... we see these shit results, and to me, Thorin, I was kind of like, all right, like this makes sense. They probably all like this is a bit of a shocker, I'm sure, for them that they've realized the whole team's changing. But apparently, I was wrong because they didn't seem to care very much after the group stages, and everything was fine in the team.
This is where you actually are damned if you do and damned if you don't if you're Falcons. Because on the one hand, when they were getting wrecked, everyone did this thing where like they just did the results-based analysis. So they go, well, what do you expect? How are degster and Tessa's going to play now when they know they've lost their job? Then they just like won it all the games in the tournament. They go, well, there you go. Dead team buff, isn't it? They just know. It's like, what the fuck? You're just literally interpreting a 180 based on the results. So I know people are going to do that anyway. But the thing is, I actually do think that latter factor is a real concept. Like, yes. By the way, it's even a famous sports concept. Like in sports, it's not normally you're a dead team. It's the idea that like you're on a contract year. You know that at the end of this year, you're going to have to sign either a new contract or go elsewhere. So like, put it this way, that if you can't handle that sort of pressure as a pro, you're probably not going to be a very good pro. That's the sort of thing that does like focus the mind and make you think like, I'm not really even just playing this next tournament. I'm actually playing for like, by the way, if you're the Falcons players, you might be playing for the rest of the year, mate. As in, if you do badly in that tournament and then they replace you with m0NESY and Kyousuke, you might just be on that bench forever. You might never get out of that contract prison. So you're very motivated. I think Dex is the obvious example to have like the best tournament of your last 3 years or something, mate, because you actually are. And by the way, he did probably the best version of it I've ever seen. What an amazing advert to be on any team that isn't Falcons. Like, I wasn't even trolling. If I was people like FaZe, I'd be going, maybe we should consider picking this guy up. Or if these guys are available, and also I do think it shows a level of mental fortitude to be able to play when you're not just. Here's the sad thing: it's not even like a normal team where it's like, but if I play really well, I can stay. It's like the joke everyone makes about Nork with device. Like, the joke is even fucking Dexter would tell you, yeah, you probably should sign m0NESY instead of me if you can. He's fucking m0NESY, you know, like, so you can't even blame on that one. So I think that was a factor. I did put it this way. When I saw them play at the last PGL, which was the last good result, I do think they played a bit freer. Like, I didn't see as many of the big chokes at this one. They did sort of sit, by the way, you almost did see it from like the Nico angle as well, which is Nico didn't look as sour as he usually did. Yeah. He was sort of like rolling with the punches. I actually think, by the way, it's a good sign when Nico's all pissed off like that. It means he's really into the game. He wants to win. He thinks his team can do it. So I thought in general, people did have a little bit of a looser vibe about them, which is also why when they won, the weirdest part of it was, like I say, you win, you want to see that team. Oh, will they defend next? No, they were making like a retirement party or something like, hey, oh, love you too. Oh, see you later. See you at the next event. Oh, shit, will I? Like, it was fucking whack, wasn't it? It was weird. It was just disturbing.
No, I mean, how is it for you? Do you have anything to jump on the back of that one? Because for me, I'll tell you what I felt when they lifted the trophy. Like, a little bit sad, because I was like, damn, I actually really liked what I saw this event. Like, wow, like, I'm kind of feeling this lineup. And yeah, m0NESY's cool and everything, but like, I liked what I was seeing there. I probably would have wanted to see more.
I liked what I saw. I don't know if I'd want to see more, to be honest. When you have m0NESY coming in, I don't think you can possibly say that, no, I'd rather see degster continue on this team. Like Thorin said, if there's going to be a replacement and you have m0NESY coming in, you can't just say, you know, there's nothing that you can say as degster to be like, no, I think that's a bad decision. You know, don't take the number 2 player of last year. It's when you have that opportunity, it's just, there's no way you can consider looking at this Falcons run and then say, I think they could replicate this multiple times. Not that they couldn't make another playoffs run or make more deep runs, but I do firmly believe that this was partially a dead team buff regardless, because they were playing more free. Nico was tilting a lot at Lisbon, and like you said, and this time you didn't really see it as much, even though they were down super early. And in a lot of the interviews, they were talking about this like mental fortitude and just having these conversations. And on a level, I feel like when you're that down and you're having these conversations about, you know, like mental fortitude coming back into the tournament, there is a little bit that's easier when you know that this is probably your last tournament with this lineup. Like, you know that you have the mentality of like, let's actually go out on this high rather than, you know, we have to build this mental fortitude long term, do it again and again and again. It is, you do have a slight mental shift that allows you to kick it into a different gear, I think. And I think going forward from this tournament, it's just, when you look at what Falcons have done with this lineup and you have m0NESY come into it, I think people are really going to have a very hard time trying to continue this whole, oh, Falcons suck narrative and the whole hate train that's happened, even though I'm sure you still have the people who are going to hate because of the Saudi backing and for all the players, you know, taking the bag or whatever. But you have Nico and m0NESY back together. You have Kixon as a talented in-game leader. The Kyousuke move, if that happens after the major, that's obviously a huge talent that could possibly upgrade this lineup even more. I do feel a little bad for Tessas because I feel like he's actually been really good on this lineup. He's actually been excellent on this lineup, and that's the one that is a little bit curious for me, because as you said, when you have someone like m0NESY coming in, it's hard to argue against it. When you have someone like Kyousuke coming in, obviously there's a lot of talent there, and you've seen some of the peaks in Spirit Academy, and there's a lot of potential, but it's still not actually verified against top teams, against consistent top
People
elite
do act like it's a
events.
guarantee he's going to be like Donk 2.0, basically. It's ridiculous, isn't it? He hasn't played
Yeah,
the game yet.
I don't know about the Dong 2.0. I've been speaking to a couple of the commentators who watch a lot of Tier 2 and Spirit Academy, and they're like, he is really great, like he's super skilled, but the team as a whole around him isn't that great. So you get to see him like pop off, but they don't know how he would perform in a team with other players that are at a higher skill level against sort of Tier 1 opposition. So that is going to be like the big question mark. Obviously, he shoots really damn well though. So I think if you put him maybe in a if you put him in a program with someone like zonic and he's working with a Nico and a m0NESY, like that is, and magisk will be there, like that's one hell of a group of players to learn from. Like if
Sure.
you have like even a minute amount of talent, like I'm pretty sure they can bring out some amazing stuff. But we'll talk about Kyousuke in a bit. I actually just want to focus
yeah.
now on the lineup as we said with m0NESY, because obviously there was a time when G2 had Nico and m0NESY and they still couldn't win a major. Do you think it's going to be a little bit different with this team now going into the major because they have the very experienced coach and because of the other players in the lineup notes?
I think m0NESY coming into this lineup, it's separate from the whole G2 angle of majors. I just think the lineup's already shown that it has the potential to actually get good results. m0NESY is just an on paper complete upgrade in every way. And I mean, I don't doubt that they could definitely make majors. They could potentially win majors with this lineup. I think G2 at the last major almost lost themselves in a way. Like they said, I think Malb said in an interview or in a confirmed episode or something that uh, they all felt on that day on the semifinals that they all just like woke up on the wrong side of the bed almost.
Right.
And it's literally like they all felt like they just had one off day, and if the semi was played on the next day, the result could have been completely different. Like they all felt like they could have like won the entire thing basically if it just hadn't been that specific day. So I think while that G2 lineup had potential, I would say the ceiling of this is actually way higher, just given the fact that you actually have Kixen as an in-game leader. You have the Nico m0NESY core that's going to last for a very long time. And with the way Tessus is playing, as we said earlier in this lineup, I think like I don't see where you would actually have too many downsides. The only thing is obviously Matt just hasn't had the same kind of level that we used to see from him, which is the one worrying sign. But I was looking at Skybox data for comparing degster and m0NESY actually to see where the biggest impact would be. And the thing is, if you look at degster's stats for the entire year, um, his his best performances are usually on CT, and his T sides are actually like pretty
They're a bit below
woeful
average,
all
right?
around. Yeah, they're exactly. They're average to like below average almost,
Yes.
especially for an opper. And m0NESY obviously is excellent across the board, especially on T side. One of the biggest things is that m0NESY's opening kill attempts is like it's way
Right.
higher. Like degster's is almost negligible compared to m0NESY. And when you have someone making T side opening attempts like the way m0NESY is, it does alleviate a lot of the pressure from the rest of the roster to rifling pairs to take duels or like have to get flashed in to do a trade or whatever. So you have m0NESY able to get those opening picks and go untraded. So it opens up a lot more potential for this roster going forward, I think, and you have a lot more dynamic plays you can run with m0NESY also obviously trying to find smokes and adding a lot of layers to their game. So I think the ceiling of this roster is actually extremely high. It just might take a little bit of time to actually get rolling with. I don't think it's going to be an immediate integration of m0NESY, even though I think the ceiling will immediately be higher.
So obviously they have like a month and a bit till the major, Thorin, which I'm presuming is why Falcons try to grab m0NESY now so that they can make a proper major run. Were you surprised that G2 let him go though before the major? Because for me, obviously now we've seen the interview with Banks where he's like
Sure.
let it slip that it was a bit of a mess at G2. We've seen there was HLTV confirmed yesterday. We've now heard there are problems. But for me, I was like, what the hell is G2 doing? Why don't you make this deal that he comes to you after the major to give him up now? One, screws your team up completely. But two, it just seemed like, I don't know, such a weird move to make as an org to get rid of one of the best players of all time that you have in your roster just before the major.
The problem is, I actually think it was an excellent move by G2 because I think it is the
Okay.
only way you get that many $1 million from a
Yeah.
guy that's right near the end of his contract. Otherwise, if this major had already been played, if you're Falcons, it depends if you just want to waste money. You could literally just go to m0NESY and go, remember, we don't have like poaching rules like like League of Legends where Riot's going to call you into an office. You can just message the guy and go, just wait till the contract runs out, and instead of paying $1 million, how about you get 500K signing bonus? Like that's easy. Like they would have that. So that time, if you're G2, you still lose m0NESY anyway. By the way, you're not going to do fuck all at this major. Like realistically, just making playoffs of this major is probably what the par for the course would have been for G2. I actually think, by the way, they overperformed at the PGL Bucharest. Like in my opinion, I actually think they fucking the second they saw that complexity over Aurora result, like, because I actually think Aurora would have got G2. I think it would have been Aurora versus Falcons in the final. I thought that even would have been a great match. I actually think that G2, just look at the way, in theory, remember, they had a flawless run. They were beating everyone at this tournament. They go all the way to the final. They looked a bit lackluster in the final to me. So the problem is, I've always thought that roster was the opposite of the cliche. It was like less than the sum of its parts. You looked on paper every time, and you were like, this should still be pretty good, though. Like, I think God's a good player. Like, Malbs is good. None of these players are bad, but unless you're not a fan of Stax's and IGL, but something about it never did come together. So for me, I actually don't think they would have. I'm actually glad they're not delusional enough to think like, hey, we could have won a major with him. No, you probably would have made like top 8 or maybe a semi run if things went awesome. So I think it's more realistic to sell him now. And then on the side of the Falcons, I mean, presumably that's why they're willing to pay the millions, because one thing you also can't do is just going to play into that, like Kassad hate on Falcons, the org approach. You can't do an Astralis and just miss every major. If you just keep missing majors, you can have like an excuse for one. Those excuses get really tired after you've missed 2 or 3. Like eventually people just want to see you in the major and at least mixing it up like a G2 would have done. So I don't hate it in that regard. Like the real misplay, in my opinion, on G2 is how it ever got to this point when Nico goes like at the end of a contract and then this guy's going, could have gone for free. That's the most scary thing, is the idea that could have happened. He could have just done like the phase where they just let their 2 stars go over the years on the free transfer at the end, which I think is crazy. I do think if you know the guy's not committed to you, better to sell a little bit of the time you've got left in exchange for millions, because the part people aren't thinking about, the bigger issue for G2, obviously there's no one can replace m0NESY, but if you're going to get like $2 million, bro, you can do a lot with that. Like you can get like 2 really good players for that. You can start over your whole squad. You can, by the way, it's even implied to me, but they just blow the whole roster up and keep 2 or 3 of the players. Like you can get a new IGL for that. Like there's all sorts of angles you can go with. So bearing in mind you're already losing him, I don't hate the pivot. I hate the idea you just lose Nico m0NESY. I don't know what you're doing there. Like that makes me think the big picture's a bit off inside the team. But on this one individual case, I can forgive it, because like I said, I don't
the best
believe
of a bad situation.
I don't think they could have won the major. So I think that's actually worth it to get the millions if you're them.
And I think based on what we've heard now, the players weren't happy there. Like Nico wasn't happy, m0NESY wasn't happy. They needed to move. So rather like
that's how you know people hate Falcons, because think about what everyone said for the last 3 months of G2 last year when they kept winning those blasts. Everyone kept going, how could you ever want to break up Nico m0NESY? It's like, well, here's Nico m0NESY. No, not like that though. Like, fucking hell, but you're just giving you your wish. That's literally what you were all crying about. Because I'll tell you what this actually taught me, Sam, is that, you know what? Everyone who's a macho man online loves to make fun of women watching soap operas. You're all into soap operas yourself. The joke is, you all hated Degster and said, why should Pius lost his job? Then when he saw Degster like crying or whatever and lift a trophy and writing nice tweets like, oh, what the hell? I love Degster now. Why can he be replaced by m0NESY? Like, fucking, get your story straight. So everyone's all over the place on these ones. Like, by the way, I was the biggest Degster fan ever. Everyone was telling me he was garbage until about a month ago. Like, but now he won the tournament and it's his last ride. You're all just emotional like it's a fucking Fast and the Furious movie. It's not. It's real life. It's real life.
I've never understood that when men do that thing about like women in soap operas and stuff, and like you said, the macho man, because I'm like, have you seen sports? Like you are all obsessed with
where the locker room drama. It's the best shit ever in it, of course.
And I mean, especially the CS. I mean, we were talking about this before we started recording notes, and I was like, if you ever, like the HLTV forums are just so many threads of you out there trying to figure out which player doesn't like this player because they're.
It's just us weekly. It's the us weekly comment section. Yeah, but just with men who 14 instead of being a 25-year-old woman.
I'm probably going to be in trouble for this as well, but I've also realized, like, I actually realized this at PGL Bucharest. We even have our own TMZ. So TMZ, if you don't know, is like this ridiculous gossip site that women love to go on, where they just write the most absurd things about celebrities and then post pictures. We have that Dust 2 US. I watched it during PGL Bucharest, and I was like, my gosh, it's like TMZ. They're like reporting on like the most random. I think I did an interview with Hunter. on the broadcast, and I said to him that I understand that you probably have been told
Oh,
that
is
you
this where
cannot.
this comes from? That thing of like banned from interview. This comes from your
Yes,
interview. Oh,
it
right.
wasn't.
Okay.
All I said was the interview
Right.
starts. I want to be clear. At no
Okay.
time did anyone from G2 or PGL come and tell me that I can't say anything.
Yeah, that's right.
It
Move
was
on to the
free
next
game.
paragraph where the gun moves down.
Yeah, they were like, do whatever. Like no one said a word, and all I did
I love
was
it.
I just said to Hunter, I know, and maybe this was the problem. I said it with like an authority, but I went, I
Okay.
know your PR team has told you you can't answer this, so I won't ask the question about what's happening. And then
Oh,
I
right.
moved,
Okay.
and I moved on. And
Oh,
then
By the way,
later,
which by the way is a really good way to do it, because
Yeah.
there's definitely been times where the same things happen to us where people will only agree to do an interview
Sure.
if we don't ask about a certain
Yeah,
question
yeah.
or something, right? But when you're the person doing the interview and someone reads it, they're like, oh, why the fuck did this person not ask about this?
Yes.
The way you did it is actually probably the best way you can do it, especially on broadcast, is say, you've told us we can't ask this, so I'm not going to. And then you like move on.
well,
Right?
that was my thing, because I was like, so then people know. And then he addressed and this was the thing. This is Dust. They did just the first hit. They just did that he's been told that G2's not allowed to speak about this. No, that was just me. Because later on he starts going, everyone knows like the future's up in the air. He says it.
Okay.
So then I went, I'm paraphrasing now, and then I just said to him, well, do you want to talk about that future? And he was like, no, we're just going to focus on the tournament. Giggle,
Okay.
thing over. Next day, G2 has been banned from talking about m0NESY. Like I was, anyway, TMZ, there it is. That's what we've now got.
Okay.
And I think they reported on all Maui's drinking habits during that tournament as well.
Okay. What was
really
his
fun.
drinking habits like? What was he up to? Drinking
So-
cocktails?
I think
or
he
what was
agreed to
doing?
like buy CXEI a six pack
Oh,
of
the
beer
beer.
or something.
Sexy a beer.
Right. Okay.
So they said that he had said that, and then the next day he'd tweeted that they'd gone out drinking, and then he was like, well, then I think the next article was Maui does buy beer. I'm like,
Fucking hell.
Wow.
It's so Tuesday. I know. Fucking hell. All right. It's not
To
even
be fair,
blood.
so I will say for Dust to US, I will say their one thing is that they have obviously the English overlap with HLTV, so like they have to cover news that we don't in a way that we don't. Whereas like at
So
least
they're
with Dust2
TMZ.
DK, they can cover like regular
Right.
international news, and it's in Danish, so it actually has
Right.
a different catering.
That's why they
group.
editorialize a little bit on just
Yeah.
the US. I mean, it's catered for US fans, is the premise, right?
Well, I mean, what we've learned is that men love soap operas and celebrity
Okay,
dramas.
yeah.
The next time you're mocking your girlfriend for that, just remember that time you spent 20 minutes on Dust 2 US streaming through Maui's drinking habits. But focusing back on to the Falcons conversation now, do they have enough time to actually make a deep run at the major? I think that's going to be the big question, because I'm presuming, as you both mentioned, they've spent all these millions on m0NESY because they've more than likely called zonic into a room and said, hey, we'll give you everything you need, but best believe we want like nothing less than
Sure.
playoffs, I'm
Yeah, yeah.
presuming.
I mean, put it this way, the Kyousuke angle alone tells me, like, now is when they think the iron is hot, it's time to strike. Like, this is where they don't just want to win. By the way, here's what's funny. We didn't cover that separately, but, like, I would have been fine with them doing it one at a time, you know, check out how Tessus would. By the way, I'm even thinking of that angle. As much as people here, like, yeah, but it's not the same as Melbs. Tessus would have played the most sacrificial role ever for NiKo and m0NESY. Like, those guys could have, like, pumped their numbers even more. But the one thing I do like about the idea they're even floating it, like, we'll get this guy as well. It's like, if you do have all the money, why go piece by piece? That's what you do when you like have to manage a budget, or you know, we're just building growth. No, if you're this team, you've basically already put your balls on the table 50 times and be like, we're going to build a super team, and you've never managed it. So like at this point, just go for it. Just spend all the money and try and win everything. Because I tell you what, like we said at the beginning of the episode, if you're actually winning majors, it's going to get really hard to hit on these players at that point in time. And by the way, a lot of those zonic narratives are going to suddenly come back to bite a lot. There'll be a lot of deleted tweets the second they win a major, put it that way. Like there's some spicy ones coming. So I do think that they actually do think they can win this major. And here's what's crazy. You can't say they're one of the favourites because they haven't even played a tournament with this lineup. You have to see the roster. But remember, one of the reasons why no one's given them the credit even for winning this last event is everyone's playing this game where they go, everyone sucks in CS now. And you go, well, there have to be some good teams. And they go, all right, then maybe there's like Vitality and Spirit and Mouse. And you're like, okay. But by the way, people don't even put Na'Vi in that group anymore. So there's only 3 good teams in the game. Like, by the way, I sort of agree, but the problem is, logically, 4, 5, and 6 have to then be good teams, or the game sucks, doesn't it? So, to me, if you look at those big 3 names, maybe those 3 teams you'd expect to beat them. But, bro, if this works, if NiKo and m0NESY actually works, why couldn't they be, like, right there after that? Why couldn't it be, like, the 4th best team at the major? Or, you know, have an outside shot to get in a bracket where you get a run to the final? So, I don't think it's impossible. I do think those 2 players are just going to cook. I'm amazed. I still don't get that part either. Why, of all the things for people to be skeptical about, are you skeptical that Nico and m0NESY might not be able to play together? I don't get it. I actually put it this way. I think they were basically playing without an IGL, for fuck's sake. They were still tripping over and winning maps against every... They were beating Vitality and fucking Na'Vi in best of 5. These guys are unreal, so I think they're going to cook, personally.
It's also the same damned as you do, damned if you don't situation we were talking about with zonic earlier, because if he promises, back to what you were saying about Kyousuke, if they promise that they're bringing him in and they're making multiple changes, they're clearly committing to try and upgrade the roster. But then when he wasn't doing that, people are like, oh, why isn't he trying to make changes? And he's just talking about how he can't make the roster any better. So it's the exact same situation, but reverse, and people are just going to continue building on that. And on the m0NESY point, it's clearly proven that them as a duo on G2 was basically what was carrying them to playoffs repeatedly for most of the year. It was what got them a lot of their results throughout last year. When you have him coming into this team, how can you possibly think that if Falcons are able to have the results they have this year already, how are they not going to do any better than what they already did? Because if you actually go down the list of teams that could potentially make playoffs at the major, let's say, like Vitality obviously is a lock, Spirit, a lock, m0NESY, I think it's safe to say that they're a lock just based on the way that they've started the year. Aurora have shown like a couple of cracks, but again, I think they're also burnt out a little bit. If they have a little bit of time off, they should easily make it. Then you start hitting the category of teams that are a little bit shaky. Like now this G2 without m0NESY, I think playoffs might even be like all they get, if that. And you have Na'Vi who've been shaky, but again, they should still make playoffs just based on their talent. But you have Mongols who still aren't able to really prove themselves on stage. You have FaZe who are clearly struggling, and then you have Falcons. That's like the top 9 teams on hltv in order. I don't see how you could argue against Falcons making a good case for that playoff spot when they've already, got second at PGL. They've won with PGL. At Kato, I think they only lost to it was like Eternal Fire and m0NESY or something like that. So yeah, sorry, G2 and Eternal Fire. And then like most of their losses are usually to teams that are like pretty good, if not ones who are on the rise. Like they lost to, I think, 3D Max, who have been playing really well at the start of the year. So there's really very little case for me, unless somehow this m0NESY move like crumbles the entire structure that Kickzen's built, or they just really don't get along in terms of the way that they're looking at the game. But I just don't see that happening, because I think m0NESY is like very flexible with that kind of like the way he can play the game, and the amount of extra dynamic that brings to this roster is just gonna elevate them. So I would say that it's very hard to say that they won't make playoffs, and I would say that they should almost be a lock for semifinals depending on the bracket.
I think that it's going to be interesting, but like you said, I don't think m0NESY would have gone there. I'm sure Nico said, listen, I'm playing with Kickzen. I like this. There's been communication, right? So m0NESY knows what he's coming into, and they know each other well enough. And like we've seen them, they carried G2 to a couple of trophies, in my opinion. So like, I think they did. So I'm like, okay, cool. Now you put them in there with players who I think are like legitimately good. And I think Kickzen I actually think he is I think he's inexperienced and young, but I think he's a good IGL. If you look at what he's done, not just with Falcons, but outside of that, he's had good, consistent results. Now you're giving him the best possible pieces, which any IGL would tell you they want. You don't have to do a lot with 2 of the best players in the world. You just got to kind of give them the space they want, right? So it should work out. And they've got IM Melbourne, Blast Rivals, and IM Dallas before that. So they've got 3 tournaments with like all the big teams to get a feel for what's right and what's wrong and what's working. So they should have a good major.
By the way, one thing I did love as well is I actually love that CS pros, the area where they're not very media trained, is they never understand the implication of what they're saying. Like they never would guess any of the shit that we're all going to go on drama feast on. Like we're saying that thing earlier about as Falcons band talking, because m0NESY himself, right, as far as I can tell, he's been very respectful the whole time Snax was in their team. He's never dissed Snax. If you read that sort of exit interview, he basically made it sound like it was basically Nico calling anyway. Like, whoa, fucking hell, like you don't. It's like that thing I always say about Casado on Hot Take Point Made. Like his best takes aren't his hot takes. It's where he just says something like throwaway, and that's like the craziest shit anyone said on the whole episode. Like, what the fuck? But so when I saw the interview, I'm like, bro, if that was like intentional shit, I'd go, that's a fucking masterclass. The way he made it seem like he was slipping that in there. He didn't even mean to do that. He's just sort of like telling the truth, I guess. So it is sort of implied to me, by the way, that like if you just read all the interviews at this point, the Malbs ones, it's just implied like what they did in that team was Snacks was sort of half an IGL and then Nico just got to call whatever he wanted. And so seemingly that's what they lost in G2 and that's what went over to Falcons now and that's one of the areas they look good. So I actually even think that aspect in theory surely makes it better because you've got Kixan, who already was a loose style caller anyway. And by the way, he's never had players of this talent. Like, this is crazy level of talent. And then you've also got Nico to do some like God tier mid round or something based on presumably what he's doing in the game. That sounds mega. This is why the real joke is get ready. I'll give you the prediction. When they do a really good job and they win some tournaments or come like finals of a major, here's what they'll say, Sam. They'll just go, yeah, but can we be sure Zonic's not a fraud? He had the number 2 and number 3 HLT. You'll just do that. They'll just do like when he had good players now. So like you can't win Zonic, mate. You actually have to win the major, bro. Until you lift that trophy, they'll just say, well, no, he had good players, didn't he? Like, yeah, that is a requisite to actually being good in the game, believe it or not, guys.
Doesn't that narrative is always... It's a bit of an irritating one where they say, like, they'll say, oh, Zonic's...
Either aside from the jokes earlier last year, no one hits on Taz, and he did have the equal mercy. He wasn't fucking sniffing majors, mate. Like, what was he waiting for, you know? It's a good question.
I do think it's a bit cruel sometimes, like with the Zonic thing, saying he's a fraud because Falcons wasn't doing well. And like you said now, if they win, if they do a deep run, everyone's just going to say, oh, it's because he's got good players. But I was like, and this is a football analogy, and I don't even watch that much football.
Go on.
Thorin's been teaching me for like a year of the Trolls. Some football managers are very good at managing big personalities.
Yeah.
Other football managers are very good at finding new talents and putting them together and developing them. There are very few managers that can find new talent, develop it, and manage big personalities all at the same time. So Zonic's thing might be that he's very good at coming up with strategy and working with those big individuals and putting that together. And then you've got another coach who's really good at like scouting new talents and rising them up. It doesn't mean that one coach is shit and the other one isn't. It's just a different style of coaching, right? That's how I would understand it.
No, I absolutely do think that's even the case. Why, actually, believe it or not, that's why, to me, the more surprising thing is that they want to gamble on the Kyousuke guy. I would have thought Zonic's shit would be like, let's work with established players who've already been there. But there were people like Tessa have been that close to like finals themselves. They've been in a bunch of good spots. So I'm amazed he actually wants to gamble on that part. That's the part we've never seen in his career. Like the idea you take a guy, in this case, who's never even played Tier 1 lands, and you're going to develop him. Like, by the way, if you can do that, I will say that will also turn your career narrative around a lot. But then again, I assume the plebs will just go, yeah, but he was always going to be down part 2 or whatever. So that could also come back to bite you. Who knows? I will. Didn't he also, like everyone does forget this one, didn't Zonic also do one of the craziest like interview faux pas of all time notes? Didn't he say something mental like when he first joined the team? Didn't he say something on the lines of, didn't he say something like everyone says they're coming for the bag, but I am the bag? It's like, that would sound dope if you then won the next major or something. But like, that sounds really bad then when you spend the next year like, I've got any players. These players are all shit. Like, yeah, you said you're the bag. Like, what are you talking about? Didn't he say that? Wasn't it?
I don't remember this, but
I'm almost certain
he did. He did. We'll look it up now. We're paraphrasing, but there was a comment like that, and it didn't age well. And I think that was the problem. Is a lot of those interviews didn't age well. But yes,
like, I make it sound like everyone's unreasonable for hating on him. I do think a quote like that and going, he didn't really make his own bed that well, did he? You know, fucking hell.
Yeah, it was. You made comments like that, then you were like, oh, it's not really the team I wanted. True. That's why we lost. Like it constantly changed, but. The thing is, for a long time, I think with Falcons, like, so we all know when this whole lineup started and we've done the history of Falcons and how that thing happened, they didn't get the lineup they wanted. They ended up having to settle for that ends core. It didn't go that well. And then obviously because the results weren't there, you can imagine if you are a Nico or a bigger player, it suddenly isn't that attractive to go there, right? Because it's not doing that well, which was, I think, I don't know, but my outside view is kind of what was starting to happen at the beginning of this year, where you were back in the situation where maybe you weren't getting all the pieces you wanted, so you had to run out and grab the heroic core. None of that is on the table anymore because now you have Nico and m0NESY. And like we know that Yimfat literally said to people that he would go to Falcons if they had m0NESY. When they didn't get m0NESY, he didn't go. They're going to have a lot of players banging on their door, notes now that they've got Nico and m0NESY, and they've got Zonic, who, if you speak to pro players, the fans will tell you that he's a fraud, but every pro player I speak to says he's on their list of coaches they would want to potentially work with. So now Falcons becomes a very attractive organization, right?
Yeah, and the other thing is, even if you're not a fan of organizations or you don't like the Saudi backing of Falcons, people are fans of Nico. They are fans of m0NESY. And if you're a fan of Nico or m0NESY, you should want them to have the kind of org that has the financial backing to be able to go and buy these players. Because if you're sitting there and you're watching Nico and m0NESY not win titles or not win majors with G2, and then they go to Falcons, they have someone who can now, buy out a Kyousuke, or they can buy out the next prodigy. They can buy out, a player from another top team that's actually going to make them better. You should want that for them, just based on wanting to see Nico win a major, just wanting to see these players have success. It's just overall like better for them as a position, because you're seeing like these interviews come out as well, like Swanee saying that like G2 didn't want to make these certain moves, they didn't want to take feedback, but then now you have these players in a position where it seems like the org or zonic are going to at least enable that. So I think it's just overall good for them, because I want to see Nico win a major. It's heartbreaking seeing him lose repeatedly, or the look on his face. I've seen it at a couple of majors when they're eliminated. And it's always really sad. So I think actually having this pairing again and having the ability for an org to be able to make those purchases is going to you can only be happy just for the players themselves.
So what do we think that this Falcons roster is going to look like? Because obviously the Kyousuke rumors are out there. I also think they were a bit of strange rumors, because they said that obviously Falcons was inquiring. I presume every major organization is inquiring about the kid. If their talent scouts
Depends
weren't
if they've got millions to
inquiring,
spend. Depends if they've got the cash, right?
well, I mean, I think you should still reach out, right? That's your job as a talent scout, is just to go and ask. And yeah, fine. Like if you phase, you go and ask. Maybe you're not interested, but you should at least see if the idea is there that maybe you can potentially purchase. I don't know. I just think when it's a young, like what people are saying, the next generational talent, you should probably just go see how much it's going to cost. I'm curious about the Kyousuke move, but do you think that there will be more moves after that? Do you think that there is gonna, say, a Yimfat's gonna pop up suddenly and be in the conversation, or another player, Thorin?
I actually think this is going to be the most fun part of Falcons, not just because of Nico m0NESY. I actually think it goes the other way. I think this is going to be the approach, which is quite famous in sports, of like the New York Yankees or the fucking Manchester City, etc., Real Madrid. What you do basically is, because you have almost unlimited money relative to the other teams, you can't lose, because when you lose, you just keep buying good players that just join your team. And if one of them doesn't work out, like the joke would be, say the Kyousuke guy doesn't work out, right? If that's FaZe that's invested in him, you probably got him for a year and a half now, mate. Like, you have to make it work. You have to find a way to position. In Falcons, you can for real not only say, I'll have another chance at that, but you can even go, just forget about it, put them on our bench, sell them if you want, or just fucking who cares? We've got all the money anyway. So I think there's a world where they just keep signing sort of HLTV top 20 type number players. And eventually, like, no one's ever done that in CS history basically before. Like, no one's ever had budget like that. And like we're saying, now they have the ultimate magnet players to join. They've got the coach and the star players to join. Like, think about the players we're talking about. Aside from Kyousuke, we're not even talking about people who will be stars. Like, now we're just talking about complementary pieces. Like, if it might sound silly to imagine Yimfat goes now because how m0NESY is doing. Not if m0NESY doesn't win any more trophies and he just has that one PGL and suddenly, Falcons is like beating him at the major. That's when suddenly you just go, why don't I just play with Nico m0NESY? That would even work. So I think they're going to become super attractive. And I actually think as long as you're not hating on the whole Saudi angle, that's not your reason to dislike them, which I totally understand is a valid reason. If you want to watch it just like sports, look, we can all complain about some teams having more than the others, but it is cool when they can actually buy all the best players and you can see what would a super team look like. I think even when they don't work, there is something like romantic about the super team. Because I mean, you can even think about when they had Malbs and Nico and m0NESY on the last one. If it ever even vaguely works, it's just awesome. Like, there's an aspect of the game you don't normally get to experience. You're not having to slowly build a project up. Like, everyone in a way wishes you could skip to the end and see if it works, which is what you're sort of trying to do with the super team. It's been, like I said, instead of being like, right, now we take the step to the major and then we go to the step. No, they're like, why don't we just fucking win the next major? Sign whoever we need.
It also breaks the conversation that you would normally have around this kind of thing, where, for example, like Jimfat said no to this team and then he re-signed a contract with m0NESY. Usually when other orgs are in that position,
yes,
they're not going to buy that player anymore because now his buyout's going to be astronomical. But maybe Falcons decides in a year or 6 months that no, they're still willing to pay that because it's going to be a upgrade in whatever way they want. So it breaks that conversation where, this player's re-signed and they're not going to go anywhere now. it really does allow a lot more flexibility in those kind
Also,
of
by
moves,
the
right?
way, as a quick aside, no one ever thinks of this detail because technically, you have to understand one of the trickiest things about the way the Saudi angle has been presented with Falcons is it is just assumed, I'm afraid, that the actual Saudis themselves are invested, not just through like other investors, like the sovereign wealth fund in some way through the PIA. That's never been confirmed. That's just something that the guy on HLTV confirmed was like did sort of a I can't say who my investors are basically. Like that's what he said. But everyone treats it like they themselves are the same company as like ESL, etc. But with that said, I will say the number one priority of the Saudis from other games is their EWC. Like they care about that in theory more because remember it's like a club cup as well, and they won it themselves last year. They really care about winning that more than in theory like a major, like because they know if they win as the org, they get to look like the best org in esports. So I also think that's another reason they're going to go crazy with this roster. They want to win the fucking EWC. Like they want all the big games that they're in to win that title, and that'll be a big deal for Falcons. So I don't think that's like a minor side thing either. Remember that's coming up not that far from now. When is that? Can't be that long after the major, right?
I think it's
So
in August or something.
August, and I saw this is like just me. I just saw a thing, and I have
Okay.
spent 10 days with Richard Lewis. So you have to understand
You
that
heard
now
all the
I'm like,
conspiracy shit, right? Like I say, okay,
I'm
you got to be.
overreading
Yeah,
everything.
yeah.
I'm like,
Of
ooh,
course.
okay.
Yeah.
And I saw
I love
that
it.
they released the schedule of games, and so this obviously EWC there was a Gamers 8 before that. CS was always like in the middle of the whole tournament.
Okay.
CS is now the closing event. So it will be the
Ooh,
last
okay.
one
Okay.
in the big arena. And I was like, yeah, because you got Nico and m0NESY and you're gonna make a huge splash. That's why you won it at the end. And then Falcons does well, they win the whole damn thing. That's the moment when the big Falcons trophy lifts, but you've got m0NESY and Nico and whoever
Yes.
else you've bought. So that was my Richard Lewis conspiracy. I was like, oh, that's probably why they've made that schedule like that. Not at all to fit in with the crazy Counter-Strike
By the way,
schedule, but
I know as well you now have the real problem, which is normally in CS, we don't have that much inside info. When you talk to someone like Richard, afterwards you have to like deprogram yourself. I can't say that. Don't talk about did I hear that on record or was that off or what? By the way, I'll tell you a very quick side anecdote like that. There was actually an event, it is the thing everyone will know by now, it was literally 10 years ago. There was an event, it was Gfinity Champions of Champions, which had a weird setup for this event. It was me and Richard were analysts, and then they had this guy, I think his name was like Lycan or something. He was a guy from StarCraft 2, actually. He wasn't from CS. He was like a guy I think Richard knew in StarCraft, right? And this guy was our host for this event. And there was a whole backstory where he'd done some other thing where he'd like annoyed me years earlier. So he thought I hated him, but Richard did like, the peace. He brought us together and was like, oh, it's all right. We'll all work together and have a great time. So I was like, tolerate this guy, trying to like build the relationship again. And at this event, backstage, we were all just talking. This guy's not from CS. So I was just telling him stuff like, of course, everyone's hating on Fnatic or whatever. He's like, why? I thought they were the best. Like, well, yeah, but some people think like Fusha cheated, for example. And he's like, no one would ever think they cheated. I was like, what are you talking about? There was like pros behind the scene thought he cheated, mate. In fact, some people think he cheated and got away with it. We were telling him all this, right? And then for real, he just went like, and I'm not even joking, like a day later or something mental onto Twitter. And there was some like StarCraft 2 like cheating scandal. And he just did a tweet that was sort of like, look, in CS, there's top pros cheating and everyone knows. And we were like, you lunatic. Why are you saying that publicly? Like, it's so, like, we've just worked the event with you. It's so obvious where that's come from, hasn't it? So, like, brilliant. That's a classic example where you can get wrecked on that shit.
yeah. Well, Richard
I was
did
like,
not
thanks,
see.
mate. Cheers.
Yeah, Richard did not see the EWC schedule. That was all me. I saw
Oh,
Counter
okay.
Strike at the
Okay.
end. He hadn't even brought it up, but he does educate me on lots. I understand the business of esports now, and I wish I didn't.
Okay.
So there you go. That's
Okay.
what I've learned.
That's a good line. That's a good
I
line.
shouldn't
Okay.
have insight into
That
that.
could be a
But
tagline from Four Horsemen.
yeah, I think that like that for me though, and going back to that Falcons conversation, I do think that they are going to make big moves. I think the Kyousuke move is right. We just get the biggest firepower. Someone's probably, I mean, I know m0NESY was playing Faceit with him the other day. So obviously these players have played with him. We bring in the young gun, the next donk, quote unquote. We get a Yimfat, and it's funny, Note, you brought that up. So I had a conversation with, funny enough, Prof and Dust. And I said to them, oh, do you think now that m0NESY's confirmed, Yimfat's next? And they said, oh, no, he just re-signed a contract. And I was like, I don't think it matters to this
I
organization,
know.
guys.
That's
Yeah.
the old
Like, I
rules,
really,
mate. I know.
yeah. And it's exactly like you just said. I was like, this is out of the, they don't care. Like, they'll just buy him out. Like, that is the power that they now have. But there is something kind of magical about this. So hear me out, because I like
Go on.
the story. It's so much more fun to watch this because think about it. If you have a Falcons, either it's this lineup or they've now added a Yimfat or a Kyousuke or whatever, and they're winning everything, and they go up against a Vitality, as we know Vitality now, who's playing so damn well, and they're playing in a final. it's kind of magical if a Vitality beats them, right? It feels, for a Vitality fan, it's going to feel so much
Oh,
more
sure.
special because it's like you knock down the super team. If the super team wins, people will be excited because it's their favorite players. Like, I think this is going to add a new dimension to top tier Counter-Strike if we have that super team, where it is going to be fun because you can love to hate them, or you'll end up being that fan that just loves the idea that they have all the best players. It's going to add, I think it'll just add an interesting mix, and it'll change the narrative a little bit around Falcons, but also just around that top level. It'll just add a new storyline into the mix, right?
I mean, it goes back to that whole thing where there's, people are saying like Vitality's good, Spirit's good, and, Mouse is good, and that's all. And nobody else is really good right now. Why do you not want another team to enter that conversation? It's just going to make everything better to watch.
And it's not like they're ruining a good G2 team or anything. That
exactly.
team was shit.
Yeah, that team was broken already.
They were all right. They were all right. They were just all right.
Does G2 like fade away into oblivion now though? Because it's been a couple of days, so there's a few things out. I'll be honest, I haven't watched the whole of HLTV confirmed. I've just read the snippets. I obviously watched bits and pieces of the m0NESY interview. Like, it's not good. Like, the stuff that people are saying, like the things that are coming out, they're all being very polite, but it's not good. Like,
here's what's crazy. Does no one else find this really conspicuous? Why are there no rumors about who G2's signing ever? You know what I mean? Like, you'd think now there'd be all things, they're targeting this person, they're in talks. There's nothing. It's just complete radio. It's like, right now, I don't even know who they're going to get. I mean, they got Hades for the major, but that's it.
I think it's implied that they're waiting until after the major to try and rebuild, because there's a couple of, I think Taz and Pessa both said that they're waiting, or that they're going to enter a rebuild. And
the rebuild
it kind of makes sense that if a lot of teams are going to make changes till after the major anyway. So if you have 2 million in the bank, you can kind of sit there and actually, take your time to pick out who you want to rebuild with. I just don't know how well that rebuild is going to go, because if there's not really an in-game leader you can buy out right now that would come into this team. And I mean, not that you can't replace Snacks with a viable in-game leader.
I mean,
but
Shure is technically still available, no? Just by the
that's
way.
True.
We
don't know. Yeah, true.
That's true. That's a good point. So if you have Shure, that would be a good candidate to build around. You would also have the Taz Polish connection, I guess. So that's some potential at least. So that makes even more sense though, to wait until after the major to see where the cards land in that sense.
By the way, that's also the good thing about the fact Falcons. Like, now it's not bad players leaving. Like, degster and Tess are good players, mate. These guys can also go to another team and make them stronger. Maybe they go to G2, maybe they go to FaZe. Like, wouldn't that also potentially give you another top 5, top 6 team? That'd be cool. So the actual scene can benefit from this potentially.
Do you think that there's a reason why we just don't bring up the fact that magisk is like not really playing that well, and he's just never a player discussed as a
we all know the reason why, don't we? Everyone's just got all those majors in their eyes. He won the major, he must be a bit. This happens to every great player, by the way. In fact, what's weird is the rare times it doesn't. Like, you'll get a player like a Shocks won't get sort of the fanfare that a Fallen does at the end. And you're like, bro, Shocks is way better. What are we talking about? But certain players, I do call them CS royalty, Sam. Like, once you enter this status where you get like that, it's why actually, in some ways, it shows how detrimental Falcons was to Zonic's reputation. Mate, if he didn't join that team, if he'd gone to any other team, even if he hadn't have won tournaments, he would have been the GOAT forever. No one would have ever questioned it. Remember, he won 5 fucking majors with 2 different teams as well. Like, that status, he was cemented. He actually took a massive risk by going to Falcons and building from nothing. So I do think that actually people are like a bit too harsh in that sense.
And you still don't think, though, that magisk is maybe a player who should have his head?
Put it this way, I think if you took the nameplates off, he would just be replaced immediately. The problem is, like, even in the game, I do it myself. Like, when he does, like, 2 great kills and he's about to get a 3K and he doesn't, you're like, and then you realize, wait a minute, it's just a fucking normal game. Like, you're supposed to do that routinely. Why am I getting all hyped off this? Like, but I actually do think he has, put it this way, people almost act like he wasn't in the team last year. They make it sound like, everyone just joined this year. Like, he wasn't good last year either. Like, he had problems. And I do think in this tournament, even, he had times he looked a bit rough. He didn't have that many big highlight rounds. You even think of classic Magic stuff like spray down from CT, win a big clutch. He didn't really do that much, to be honest. So here's the thing. I would hope that is also what is fair about the Falcons approach. I hope it's not that we're going to sign 1 million superstar players, but hey, magisk, you're like zonic, you get to stay forever. No, I hope eventually you're on the chopping block too. Like, if you then don't perform, right, time for you to fuck off to Australis again or something, mate. Maybe we bring in a Yimfat or some other fucking super player to play your spot. I hope that eventually becomes part and parcel of this. By the way, by the same logic, I also do hope eventually, if zonic doesn't perform with players like these, then you probably should be fired, mate. I just think if you did sign him, and again, I wasn't in the room, if you really had a conversation where you promised him a real roster of star players and he never got them until like this year, I actually think that's the area they did Snappy dirty in. As far as I know, they did promise him those things, and then they never gave him an eco, and they almost acted like he was supposed to win with Dupree, which is like we can talk about that roster in isolation, but you did give the person a false bill of goods. Like, they didn't sign up for that. So I would hope after, put it this way, as soon as he gets m0NESY, right, that's it, zonic. You've had your players now, mate. Now it's time to do something. If you don't do something, then logically Falcons should probably miss you next because they've already got the players.
The other thing with magisk is that I agree. Like, it's weird that he kind of goes under the radar with his performances. The big difference for me is that before he joined this team and he was on Vitality and Astralis, even the best thing about magisk was his consistency. He was never like off tournament to tournament, even like map to map. He would genuinely have, like not even rating wise, but just performance in terms of impact on the server, in terms of making plays without actually getting traded out or getting into positions and just holding it. He was really good at like a lot of these like micro bits in the game. Whereas with this Falcons roster, up until I would say most of this year, he's not really shown that at all. Now, obviously, when you have the structure that he was promised and it's not actually what came to fruition, then he does have that excuse. And I think you're right that this is kind of his last test. It's his last chance, really, because if he can't return to that consistency and show that level that he's actually known for, I feel like then it's definitely fair to have him on the chopping block. It's too early to call right now because it's just he hasn't had that chance and he's still pretty young. Like, he's 27. I mean, for a player who's not going to be a star of the team, that's still pretty okay. And the fact that you would potentially lose him just for, unless you can get a Yimfat and get an anchor who's going to really play those roles to perfection, I feel like he's not the worst piece to try and give a second chance to right now, at least.
What's amazed me is we've done, I think, more than 40 episodes of the show. And I think right at the start, when we started this last year, there's like 4 that were around Falcons, and all of them were so damn negative. And this was such a positive episode about this team, about the players, and about Falcons. I did not see that coming. I'm surprised. Look at this. Even Thorin was positive, and they got rid of Degster, who was like his favorite AWP child for a while. Where do you think this will be the final question, Thorin. Where do you think your boy is going to end up?
I actually do think that if you are watching this tournament, players, I think, would respect his performance. Like, because the thing I also think about Degster, I'll actually tie it a bit to what Nohte was saying there. I also think he's not a player since he did his comeback in CS2 that has ever gotten to the form again where his numbers are bonkers. But I think if you actually watch in the server, put it this way, if he gets 13 kills in a game and Wonderful gets 13 kills in a game, the Degster ones are probably way sexier and have like mad impact on winning a round and do some crazy mid-round play. The Wonderful ones are just going to be normal kills. So I do think he is an impact player, in my opinion. That's why I actually think he was kind of, look, I don't know if he actually should have been the MVP. Like, Nico's numbers were pretty crazy, but he was the talismanic player, I think, in this run.
And where do you think he goes?
That's the thing. If, by the way, those 2 teams I mentioned, I actually would recommend to both FaZe and G2. You should seriously consider this player. Like, there's not many of, like, you're not in a position right now where you can sign a m0NESY ZWU level AWPer. So after that, there's not that many left. Like, really, what you're choosing, in my opinion, in modern AWPers, they're not that many superstars. You just choose the one that fits your team. So if you think you can build around that player, I think both teams, I would be excited either way. I think if you actually went to G2, you have a chance to like build a different legacy completely because there is no Nico m0NESY. And if you go to FaZe, boy, you get to play with Carrigan. I'd love to see that fucking combo with almost any star player.
And the other thing with Degster is that he actually is a player who will take the initiative. He's not a system opper. Yes. He's willing to be in those fights. He's willing to actually like jump in and be chaotic if he wants to, which to me fits Kerrigan's style. He would be an actual good replacement for Brokey because the whole thing is with Brokey, he does make those mad plays. He does have, he does break the system a little bit, and that used to work out a lot. Not so much now. Degster seems like the ready-made fit for that if he's able to actually turn it up a little bit on T side and find that impact. The other thing is, I think one thing that could go a little under the radar is he could also replace Icy at Virtus Pro, and that could potentially actually elevate that team because they're so stuck in playing somehow a slower style than when they had Jame. So having someone like Degster able to open up and break that sort of system down as well, I feel like that would be a decent shout.
That is actually an interesting one. Where do you think he's going to land? You can let us know in the comments, and also you can tell us what you think about m0NESY joining Falcons. We've spoken about it for so long. Now it's finally happened. Let's see how they perform at the major.